go ahead and call a meeting together. It's the second time. We called it together downstairs. If you'd rise with me for a moment of silence and place please at the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. We'll be entering the public hearing. Okay,
yes, sir.
all right.
I think Mr. Brigulio with Davenport is here with us tonight. Glad to have Mitch, our financial advisor. Mitch, glad you traveled from Charlotte today, and appreciate you being here with us. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, we'll just turn it on over to him.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for having me back this evening.
Just make sure that mic, just touch it. There you go.
Better?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for having me back this evening. Tonight, here with several actions related to the funding of the high school project tonight, the first of which is a public hearing on the financing for the high school. And just thought it would be helpful to give don't touch it, sorry. All right, thought it would be helpful to give you just a brief update on where we stand, as well as a little bit of a history on where we've been in the planning for this project. Obviously dates back several years, we've been through several iterations, but leading up to this financing late this spring, early this summer, we've been coordinating with staff on potential funding, financing options for the high school, and we have looked at direct bank loan financing options, as well as the sale of municipal bonds in the public marketplace, like we funded the most recent project. And the public sale of limited obligation bonds was producing better interest rates for you all in the current market than the bank loan financing, and so we have pursued that path and gotten a lot in place to fund the project in that way. It will be funded as a limited obligation bond, and as a limited obligation bond, it will be secured by the high school itself. So the collateral or the security for these bonds will be a mortgage on the high school. It's a very typical, common way of financing school facilities in North Carolina. We've gone through the process. We've spoken with the rating agencies and working to get these bonds rated, and we will have those ratings back before the bond sale. The application has been submitted to the local government commission, and one of the things that we'll be looking for you all tonight is to ratify that the submission of that application. We will be considered for approval by the LGC at their meeting on September 10th, just ahead of our scheduled bond sale on September 11th. September 11th is the date that the bonds will be offered, and the interest rates will be set on those bonds. So that September 11th date is a key date where we will know the final interest rate on our bonds, and in which case, after that time, it will be a matter of getting the documentation together for closing, which is scheduled on September 26th. That is when you will have the funds in hand deposited in the bank to be able to start funding expenditures from the bond proceeds. As I mentioned, those interest rates will be set on September 11th. Tonight, in addition to this public hearing, there are two resolutions that you will be considering. A findings resolution, which makes the findings that are required by the local government commission for their approval of the bonds, as well as the ratification of that application to the local government commission. and a final resolution which approves the terms and conditions and sale of the bonds subject to certain parameters. Because we're not going to know the final interest rates until September 11th. You all have to approve the bonds prior to that, so we have certain parameters at which, as long as the bonds are issued or priced within those parameters, the county can move forward. And because we don't know the rates, we tend to be conservative in setting these parameters. There is in your resolution, unless you choose to change it, it is a proposed not to exceed amount, borrowing par amount of the bonds of $76.3 million and a not to exceed interest rate of 5.5%. What I'll tell you is that is below, or excuse me, the current market is well below that. We're well within those parameters right now. Don't anticipate getting to those parameters, but we do try to put some cushion in there to account for any potential market movement that may occur. We're only going to issue the amount of bonds that we need to issue to fund your project, which is just under $135 million for the high school. You've got the $62 million grant. So we are looking to fund project costs around $72.8 million plus the cost of the financing. That is how we will determine the amount of bonds we need to borrow. In the current market, and this is, y'all are gonna look at me like I'm crazy, in the current market, to fund that $72.8 million, the estimated borrowing amount, the amount of bonds, is currently $66.8 million to fund the $72.8 million. And y'all may recall in the last public sale, they're part of setting those interest rates. Investors may like to have or offer a premium pricing for your bonds, meaning they will pay you more than 100 cents on the dollar for your bonds when they purchase them. In exchange for that, they may receive a higher interest rate on the bonds. It's moving from one hand to the other. You either pay less in principal and more in interest, or more in principal, less in interest. It doesn't impact what your total payments are on the bonds. So I know that's a little confusing concept, but where we stand today, $66.8 million estimated bond issuance amount. The current interest rate is right at a 3.6% average interest rate on those bonds. All in, principal plus interest, we're borrowing the money over a 20-year period of time. So over the life of that 20 years, principal plus interest, the total payback is estimated right at $100 million. So $66.8 million principal amount, total repayment of about $100 million. Just for a little perspective, when we were together in May, going through the capital funding plan at that point in time, we had two scenarios for you. We ran a current market interest rates at the time back in May. That average interest rate was around a 3.75%, and the total principal plus interest payback was $106.5 million. So rates have improved a little bit as of today compared to where we were in May. But the key rates that we've been working with and analyzing over the years is a planning interest rate of a 5%. And that is what we have used throughout the modeling process for the CIP. That had a total principal and interest payback of $117 million. So right now, knock on wood, current market rates were below, well below that planning rate, also below where we were estimating the current markets back in May. So got less than a month, but we still got some time for interest rates to move around on us. We're going to keep an eye on it, and that's why we have this contingency within the not to exceed amount, since your approval is today and we're not locking in the interest rates until September. So that's key things for you to be aware of this evening. Two resolutions you're going to be looking to adopt after holding the public hearing this evening. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is this the time to move into the public comment?
If no one has any questions.
I didn't pick up my paper up there. Did you?
Sheriff, did you get the sign-in sheets?
Yeah, they're
Mitch has presented the funding options. I think now it would be in order to open the public hearing.
And I believe in the public hearing, if you choose to speak, it's got 3 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, at this time, you will just need to open the public hearing, and then we will move in directly into the public comment. Each speaker during the public comment will have 3 minutes to address the board, and this will be concerning the funding for the Franklin High School project.
Jamie, where is your wagon at? A pen is quit. Thank you. This is my quit too. Same color where you got. All right, Mr. Richard Leitner. You're the man.
Good morning, Board. I wasn't planning on speaking at this one, but since nobody signed up, I did first. One thing about this high school project, way back when Kevin Corbin was chairman of the school board, we had a committee looked at building the high school. At that time, it was $27 million. Now, I've been involved with real estate through this county for many, many years. And now we're at 130 million, give a few dollars, whatever. Our tax base is very strong, has been strong. I was here 35 years and we were always talked about being so strong. It's time to build a school for our children, our grandchildren, or the people that's moving in here with children that bring them jobs. They need to be educated at a level that other schools are being done. If I'm correct in thinking, our school is probably the oldest school west of Asheville, besides Asheville High, which is a historic building. So we got this money from the state, very fortunate. We improve our sales tax in the future. The citizens will go home with the same tax bill they started with before the school. But our children will leave the high school prepared for whatever jobs that there will be out there. We have great teachers, we have great administrators, we have a great county. Now let's buckle down and get to school.
Thank you, Mr. Leitner. I don't have anyone else on this sheet. Time to close it up then, right?
Yes, sir.
I've got a motion to close the public hearing. Who did that?
I make a motion to close public hearing.
Second, Commissioner Antoine. Any more discussion? Not, all in favor, raise your hand. All right, let's see what's going on. What about the number 5, Mr. Rowland?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. At this time, we will begin discussing possible action of funding for the Franklin High School project. I think first, up for the consideration of this board will be the preliminary resolution in support of a county financing for the new Franklin High School. I think that that resolution, Mr. Chairman, at this time is up for consideration by this board, and it is in your agenda packet.
Does the board need to be any more clarification or anything from the county manager regarding this?
Then we'll cut right. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution providing final approval of terms and documents for financing and construction of New Franklin High School.
Motion second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Antoine. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, exactly how much are we financing? I heard the numbers, but has there been a final from the subcontractors for this project? I know we talked about 137 million, but it's my understanding that we didn't get enough bids on some of the projects, so nothing's finalized here. And it's concerning that we would move forward without final cost of this project. I'm not sure exactly how many of the subcontractors didn't receive enough bids, but I have spoken with some of the contractors that's bid this project, and they have stated that, and I'm just telling you what they told me, was this is a Taj Mahal. It's the best of the best in this facility. And so whether it is or it isn't, but it is concerning that we don't have final numbers. And just to clear this up, and I've stated it before, when I first came on this board, I was having meetings with the architect team on phase 1, which was a sports complex. At that time, it was $15 million, and Commissioner Higdon, Chairman Higdon at the time, we were meeting out there trying to catch up. And we saw some things that we could cut costs. And so the last I remember, we were down to about $9 million on the sports facility. And now we're back up. And it is very concerning that we will just go forward with approving financing for something we don't know what we're financing. We've talked about 137 million. When that cost came out, it was stated that the school was 80% complete in the design phase. So how do you get a total cost with something that's not finalized? And so I just have reservations for approving anything that we don't have any idea what the final cost is.
Any further discussion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think we have our contractor here with us tonight. I think they can speak to some of Mr. Sherrill's questions.
Yes, sir. So I'm with Carroll Daniel Construction, CM. So when we spoke back in May, we provided a budget based off the 80% documents with construction costs at $126 million, and then the analysis of soft costs for the furniture and the rest of the things that the school system would need to provide would be that. That got to the $137 million. So we took bids. We did have a few packages that we had to rebid according to North Carolina state law. We did get bids for all of the packages. Everything has been finalized. We've submitted a complete GMP at this point. That number came in just under $123 million for the construction cost, which is under budget, which put the overall complete package under $135 million. So the construction cost and the overall are complete. That is a finalized GMP, and it is within the budget.
Okay, what you're saying is Macon County, Franklin High School is going to be 100% complete. No more, because we were approached about Phillips Street and Warrior Street and the entrance to that. You know, that all needs to be changed. It's in there.
Yes, sir. They're, at this point, and that development is in its stages, but we have included an allowance to cover that work because we understand that that does need to be captured. So, yes, that's part of this.
Thank you. This time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read a statement that I prepared. As I've stated numerous times before, I agree that the current campus is not ADA compliant and has some pretty serious repairs and renovations to the current facilities. Chairman Shields convinced me that the current campus is not adequate for the current curriculum, so therefore a new facility is warranted. I say that to say this. My vote will be no on the current plans of the current site and financing for this purpose. I feel it is a waste of several buildings that could be repurposed for other government facilities. I question if there is adequate parking. I feel the current site will be landlocked and no way to expand for the future needs, and actually will not provide the current needs of our high school students and athletes. I feel we are placing our taxpayers at risk of future tax increases because of all the needs in the other areas of this county. If not, there will definitely be neglect in the needs of the county moving forward. I would like to thank all of you that has spent a lot of time and energy working on this project. I hope and pray that I'm wrong and you're right. So, Mr. Chairman, with that being said, that's where my vote will be.
Thank you, sir.
The cost, that includes everything, the demolition, the final product.
Yes, sir.
Would, not being rude or crude, would you stand up and shake your head? Okay, thank you. My sight's bad.
I share some of John's concerns. I have a real hard time tearing down perfectly good buildings that are worth millions of dollars and doing it on the same site. We think congestion is an issue now. Waiting for the construction of this for 2 years. It's going to be a congested area.
Thank you, Mr. Hagan. Could I go with the motion? Is that the preliminary resolution?
Yes, sir, there's a motion. Commissioner Young made a motion to approve the preliminary resolution in support of a county financing for the new Franklin High School.
And Mr. Antoine seconded.
Yes, sir.
He said final in his
He
motion.
said final resolution in his motion.
Yeah, I think there needs to be two,
Yeah,
so we need it first.
Two motions, two actions.
So we got a preliminary.
Yes, right. Needs to
And we
happen
got to come
first.
back and do it for the final.
Yes, sir.
New Mr. Young, I guess to amend your motion if you're willing to the preliminary first, and then proceed with the final.
Please amend my motion to the preliminary resolution.
Mr. Hagan, we move it to the preliminary resolution. Any more discussion? We moved it to the, Mr. Young changed this to the preliminary resolution. It's just, there's two motions here. One will be the final approval, one's preliminary. We're got a motion now for the approval of the preliminary resolution.
That's the motion on the floor.
Yes. Any further discussion? If not, all vote. Am I doing something?
Did Danny second that revised motion? Okay.
Yes, he did. All right, let's go back. All in agreement of the preliminary resolution and motion that was made, raise your right hand. All right, let's see. All opposed? Now I believe we go to the final approval, right?
Yes, sir. So at this time, it would be in order to entertain a resolution providing final approval of terms and documents for financing construction of a new Franklin High School.
So, and we'll make that into a motion,
Yes, sir.
and I'll do that. I need a second.
Second.
Motion, second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote on the resolution providing approval of terms and documents for the finance and construction of a new Franklin High School. Raise your right hand. All opposed, same thing. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate people's involvement and what you've meant to this project. It's been a challenge, but that's what makes it good. Now we'll move to the you got something else?
I'm just next, yes, sir.
We missed you on 7. All right. Discussion and approval of financial policy guidelines. Excuse me, Mitch, go ahead.
No, sorry, Mr. Chair, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to keep rolling or not. So we've talked about over the last several years as part of the development of the capital funding plan, and particularly this high school project, putting in place a series of financial policy guidelines, certainly specific to debt and the debt issuance that you're moving forward with the high school, but also more generally financial policies for the county as a whole, to provide some guidelines to continue to maintain a strong financial position. There is a draft of the financial policy guidelines in your packet this evening, and this is something that we've worked on developing with staff. And there are a couple of key categories. There are capital improvement budget policies, so that capital improvement plan we've been working on over the years, adding some policies surrounding that. Debt policies, reserve, fund balance policies, some budget development policies, and some cash and investment policies. Largely, these are memorializing the things that you all are already doing. So for example, page 2 outlines the capital improvement budget policies. This memorializes the process that you all have been going through on an annual basis to identify a 10-year capital improvement plan needs over the next 10 years, with a focus on the first 5 years and a developed funding plan for the first 5 years, developing forward-looking projections, addressing both new capital costs as well as maintenance and vehicle and equipment replacement. So memorializing the things that you all have been doing on page 2. Page 3 is establishing some debt-related policies, some tax-supported debt-related policies for things like the limited obligation bonds for the high school. And down at the bottom of the page, lines 6, 7, or 8, these are really the limitations of the policies that you're establishing. And these are consistent with the levels that we've been reviewing and discussing over the last several years. The first is net debt as a percentage of your tax base. Assessed value should not exceed 2%. The second is debt service to expenditures. Your annual principal plus interest payment should not exceed 15%. And the 10-year payout ratio, this is always the confusing one, the amount of principal you're repaying over the first 10 years should be at least 50%. So if you issue $10 million over 20 years, you should pay back $5 million over the first 10 years. These are the policy levels that we're we have proposed in talking with staff as part of these draft policies. Item 8, I also think is important. It does provide the ability for you all as a board or future boards to make an exception to this policy if there is a need, an extreme need that you need to borrow for, that might put you out of compliance for a certain period of time. There is the ability for the board to make an exception to it, state the length of time that exception is anticipated to be needed, and at that point work on a plan to getting back into compliance as quickly as possible. That's on page 3. We pulled in the page right after page 3. It's confusing because it says page 6 on the bottom, but it's page 6 from the from our last updated capital funding plan. This just shows you the projections of where we were projecting to be after the issuance of the high school bonds. And so you can kind of see where you end up. For the payout ratio, you would still stay above 50% as a minimum and improve from there. Debt to assessed value would stay under 0.75% and decline from there. Debt service to expenditures gets up around 12.5%, 13%. And declines from there. So even after the issuance of the high school, you would still have additional debt capacity within these policies if there was a need to do that. Nothing is anticipated. There's no other bond issues planned as part of the current 5-year plan, but there is capacity under these policies if you needed to do something. So that's the debt-related policies. I'll flip the page back to page 4. This outlines the reserve and budget development policies. And I'm going to kind of go backwards. The budget development policies at the bottom, again, kind of memorialize the things you do as part of the budget process. The reserve policies are memorializing the things that you all have done informally over the years and establish minimum amounts of fund balance to maintain. And this is consistent with what we've talked about as part of the funding plan. So it establishes a minimum unassigned fund balance of 25% with a target of 30%. So, you shall not go below 25%, but you're going to target to maintain a slightly higher amount at 30%. If you fall below the 30, you're still in compliance with the policy, but just a little bit below that target, and you would work to get back up to that point. That's number 1. Number 2 is outlining what you can do with that fund balance over 30%. So if you are over your 30% policy target, that excess fund balance could be used to be transferred to the debt service or capital reserve fund to fund the capital improvement plan or other capital projects, or set aside in the reserve fund for future capital projects. And this is in line with what we've discussed. Fund balance is a one-time revenue source. And so the idea is we will use that one-time revenue to fund one-time expenses as part of the capital funding plan. Best practices, you don't want to use fund balance to, fund expanded operations or salaries or something that is a recurring expense, because once you spend that fund balance, it's gone, but that expense is still there and it's still recurring into the future. So this is aligning one-time revenues with one-time expenses as part of this policy. And then, like the debt policy, we do acknowledge that, in the case of a, declared emergency or an opportunity, you could be in a position where you need to pull down your fund balance below the minimum 25%. You as a board can make that exception, but in doing so, there should be a plan that is adopted to restore the fund balance within a 36-month period of time to policy limits. So we're establishing policies, guidelines, minimums, but acknowledging that in certain unforeseen circumstances, you still do have some flexibility if you need that, and you all control that as a board. And then finally, well, let me show you this. The next page, again, jumping page numbers. Page 2 is from our last presentation. This shows you where you are currently on your fund balance, excess of 70%. There is a plan as part of the capital funding plan that we discussed this year to transfer $20 million from that fund balance to the capital funding plan. And even transferring that amount, that will leave you with, as of fiscal year 23, about $6.3 million of remaining fund balance in excess of that 30% policy. So as part of the capital funding plan, would be enacting a portion of this policy to transfer excess to the capital reserve fund, but not all of it, kind of doing it in tranches as you get used to this new policy being in place. So still have some flexibility there within the fund balance. You would be in excess of the policy even after that $20 million transfer. Last piece of these policies is on page 5, the cash and investment policy. This is essentially stating that you will follow state statutes to invest your funds and establishing some guidelines for further protection with the investment of funds. To date, you have largely invested in money market funds that are earning very good interest rates right now, so you don't have any longer term security investments at this point in time. But this just puts in place, consistent with state statute, some guidelines to work around if you ever do look at additional investments beyond the money market funds like the Capital Management Trust. This is, something I know that we've talked about over the years that you all asked us to come back with after the last capital funding plan discussion, and in talking with staff, felt it was made sense to do that in conjunction with the moving forward with the high school project, establishing particularly these debt policies.
Thank you, Mitch, and I think it's good, administration and finance, we have talked about this for some time. We've worked hand in hand with our financial advisors. Again, they're professionals, and they do this. This is what they do. And when it comes to finances and Macon County's financial position, we're about to be able to perform $140 million worth of capital projects, and we're still going to have 36% remaining in the fund balance. That didn't happen by accident, and that is a testament to the financial stewardship of this board and this organization and the boards that have preceded you. I think another thing this does is, these boards change, faces change, but as long as during the budget process, and as long as when we're considering significant financial expenditures and capital expenditures, no matter who's here, when these policies are adopted on this board, these board members can go back to these policies and say, hey, these are the playbook. This is the playbook. And does this capital expenditure that we're considering, does it fit within our financial policies? And as long as we have these to guide us, we can continue and remain the financially solid organization that's allowing us to do what we're able to do today and going to continue to allow us to do what we're going to be able to do in the future. And that's continue to improve these schools, continue to make capital improvements, have money in the bank, and have the lowest tax rate in the state. And all that sounds good to me, don't you, Mitch?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we got to put that in a motion, in a book of words. How can we condense this motion?
Motion to approve these policies as presented on August 13th.
August, okay. What about the approval of the financial policy guidelines?
That's this, yes, sir.
All right. Davenport Finance. Do I need to put your name in there?
No, sir, you don't. I think you could just say motion to approve these financial policy guidelines as presented on August 13th. I think that'll probably cover you.
Okay, fellas, you heard it. That's a motion I'll make. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Antoine. Did you get all that in there? What the wording of that motion was? You got it? All right. Is So you've got a motion and a second, and any discussion? All in favor, show of hand, vote. Thank you very much. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you. I guess I can say that piece of the public hearing is over. We're going to be moving into a public comment period. You're welcome to stay, but if you're needing to leave, like Carol Daniels, I see them moving right there. Go ahead, move on out, and we'll hold our breath till you get out of there. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, Mitch. Where are you going, Grayson? I'm getting okay. We're gonna have this.